Good day, delectable student at home. My name is Mr. Linus, and I'm going to be teaching government. This platform is organized by Akimos High to reach out to the student at home because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's lesson is going to be on the topic fedralism. It's a very relevant topic, interesting. If you look at the scheme of work for SS3, it is explicitly for SS3 students. But that notwithstanding, SS2 and SS1 students can equally pay attention. Because while you're writing your exams, you might not know possibly where the questions are going to be coming from. So it's very important that you give me your attention as I take you through memory lane. As I said earlier, the topic for today is Nigerian fedralism. But before we talk about Nigerian fedralism, we must first define the concept of fedralism. Fedralism is defined as a system of government whereby governmental powers, constitutional powers, are shared between the central government and component or regional units. Now, I'll give you a very typical example. Nigeria is a federal system. Now, the seat of government in Nigeria is the Federal Capital Territory, which actually represents the federal system. And then it is from the Federal Capital Territory that power is decentralized to other component units. In the world over, there are many countries practicing federalism. In fact, it follows that modern nations must adopt the federal system. Why so? The reason is because when a federal system is adopted, government can operate functionally. As I said earlier, the definition for federalism is a situation whereby governmental constitutional powers are shared between the central government, which is usually the Federal Capital Territory, and then the regional or component units. The regional and component units here, in the case of Nigeria, will be Akwa Ibom, Cross River State, and so on and so forth. Now, to move a step further, we are going to be looking at the features of a federal system. To be able to understand a particular concept, you must be able to highlight the definition, the features, and then the problems. In scholarly parlance, that is what we call conceptualization. Now, we are going to be looking at the features of a federal system, of which Nigeria is a typical example. You have, number one, existence of a bicameral legislature. Now, when we say a legislature is bicameral, we are looking at a two-chamber legislature, like where you have at the federal government level in Nigeria, because our case study is going to be Nigeria. You have the House of Representatives, and then you have the Senate. So, in any federal system, there must be an existence of bicameral legislature. When we say bicameral legislature, we are talking of a two-chamber legislature. Although, in the course of this teaching, we are going to be looking at the limitation that is associated with the bicameral legislature. If I must show you, or if I must take you to know a problem that's associated with the bicameral legislature, you will agree with me that there is always the duplication of functions. That's why many governments in the world have boycotted the federal system, because it's very expensive. And then there's duplication. And then the second one is the use of written and rigid constitution. When we say a written and rigid constitution, we are looking at a constitution whereby all the customs, all the practices, the norms, the values of the people are in one single document. Now, the document that I'm talking about, for instance, if you get a copy of the Nigerian Constitution, you will notice that the Nigerian Constitution is a single document. That's why Nigeria is a federal system. Now, everything that has to do with the practice of government, the limitation of government, crimes, penalties, and so on and so forth, are stated in one single document. And that's why we say Nigeria is a federal system. And that is one dominant feature of a federal system, being that the federal system must make use of what? A written and rigid constitution. A very important characteristics with a written constitution is that such constitutions are rigid. When I say such constitutions are rigid, the implication of that statement is that those constitutions are not easily amended. Before they are amended, they need to go through certain legislative processes before they are amended. And then let's look at another feature of federalism, which is the duplication of organs of government at all levels. Now, the duplication of organs of government, of course, government students, you know what the organs of government are. The organs of government are the legislature, the executive, and then the judiciary. Now, in the federal system, you must have a duplication of all these organs of government, whether at the federal level, whether at the state level, and whether at the local level. These are the prerequisites that makes any system a federal setup. Now, let's look at the supremacy of the Constitution. Now, the supremacy of the Constitution is a very important feature of a federal system. Why is this so? Because in any federal system, the Constitution is supreme. Now, according to Professor A.V. Dicey, he was an American that really discussed the supremacy of the Constitution elaborately. Of course, we all know that Nigeria copies from the United States of America because the United States is a federal system. So Professor A.V. Dicey was a scholar in the United States, and he took our time to explain what is the supremacy of the Constitution. The supremacy of the Constitution has it that the Constitution is supreme to every citizen, irrespective of your political status, irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your economy level, and what have you. So that is a very important feature of the federal system. Now, most countries practice what is called the quasi-federal system. Why is this so? Because they don't really practice most of the features that are enumerated here. They might pick one. For instance, they might say, like Nigeria is practicing, they say there is the existence of a bicameral legislature. Fine. And then you will equally see the use of written and rigid constitution. You might see duplication of organs of government. But when it has to do with the supremacy of the Constitution, there is a very high limitation in that. Why the limitation? The limitation is that Nigeria have an issue of travesty and injustice, whereby you find out that some people who are highly placed are treated fairly than some people who are lowly placed. So now the question of the supremacy of the Constitution comes to fore, because the rule of the supremacy of the Constitution states that every person, irrespective of your status, irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your political affiliation, that you are the same in the society. So Nigeria practices a quasi-federal system. It is not a full-blown federal system. Now, we're going to be looking at another characteristic, which is the existence of a Supreme Court for the interpretation of law. Now, the Supreme Court is the court that is at the highest level. If you study the jurisdiction of courts in Nigeria, you would agree with me that the Supreme Court is the court that is at the highest level. It is the court that is regarded as the final arbiter. Now, aggrieved parties that have issues, that have cases that are not settled by junior courts are referred to the Supreme Court. And then when you're referred to the Supreme Court, if your issue cannot be settled as an aggrieved party, you are told to go to God. I don't know if you understand me. You are told to go to God and seek redress, because the Supreme Court is the highest court of jurisdiction in any federal system. Now, when there are issues, there could be so many issues of elections, issues of lands and what have you, and so on and so forth. When these issues are raised in most federal systems, it passes from one level to the other, to the next level, to the next level, and to the next level. But when it comes particularly to the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court has declared a judgment on an issue, then it stands. Even the president of a federal system cannot usurp the judgment of the Supreme Court. That is how important the Supreme Court is in a federal system. Now we're going to be looking at supremacy of the federal government. Supremacy of the federal government. According to our definition, we said that a federal system is a system whereby governmental powers are shared between the federal government or the central government and regional and component units. Now, the main fact that the federal government or the central government is sharing powers does not necessarily give it the same constitutional powers like these component units. I'll give you an example. In the Constitution, we have what we call the residual powers. The residual, the concurrent, and the exclusive powers of the system. Now, the federal government has what is called the exclusive powers. The federal government has what is called the exclusive powers. Now, those such powers are powers that are exceptional only for the federal government. It cannot be usurped by even subsequent levels of government. Now we have what is called the concurrent powers, and then we have the residual powers. The concurrent powers are powers that are shared between the federal and the state government, and then we have the residual powers. Those are powers that are explicitly for the local government. So what we are saying is that the exclusive powers of the federal government is the most superior of powers. I would have taken time to give you a download of typical examples of the functions of the exclusive powers of the federal government. But for time constraints, I will not be dwelling so much on it because we have a whole lot of things to teach here. So remember the clause I gave you. The clause remains that despite the fact that there are numerous features of a federal system, an ideal federal system, Nigeria does not practice an ideal federal system. Why so? Because they don't really follow the dictate, the provisions, the features, the characteristics of an ideal federal system. Now quickly, we are going to be looking at the problems of Nigerian federalism. Problems of Nigerian federalism. Now, what you must understand as a scholar is that when you're defining a phenomenon, after you have looked at the feature, after you have looked at the history, and so on and so forth, you are equally going to look at the problem and how you can solve or tackle such impending problems. Now, given that the federal system is a system where Nigeria practices, even if it doesn't really practice the federal system in an ideal sense, Nigeria usually experiences problems with the practice of the federal system. Now we're going to be looking at revenue allocation. Revenue allocation is a very big problem for the federal system as practiced in Nigeria. The reason is that some states in Nigeria, by virtue of the imperial creation, are more gifted than the others. States like Rivers State, states like Akwa Ibom, and so on and so forth. These are states that control bulk of the resources. And the fact remains that Nigeria's gross domestic product constitutes 98% of crude oil. And crude oil is a fuel that is derived from these states. Now the problem of revenue allocation comes up. Why so? Because states who are gifted, states where these resources are harnessed, for example crude oil, suffer deprivation and neglect. So we have a situation whereby you take revenue that is from Akwa Ibom and from Rivers State and then take it to the far north. And then you go to develop the north, while the people from Akwa Ibom, the people from Rivers State suffer in penury, starvation, and oil spillage. So now, there are so many commissions that have been put in place to tackle the problem of revenue allocation, of which we are not going to discuss it, but in our subsequent classes, we will look into it. A commission that was put in place to study or to address revenue allocation suggested the principle of derivation. Derivation is a principle whereby states who resources or where resources are harnessed from are given better federally allocated revenue. I don't know if you follow me. So over the years, there has been issues of revenue allocation. There has been crisis over here because it's like there is a travesty where you have some people that are preferred to the other people. So many commissions have come up to handle the issues that has to do with revenue allocation. Now let's quickly look at the problem of minority. Now Nigeria is a federal system and Nigeria is an imperial creation. When I say Nigeria is an imperial creation, the implication of that statement is that Nigeria was created by virtue of imperialistic tendencies. Imperialism in the sense that the world powers, especially European world powers, came together and then did an expedition. And by virtue of that expedition, they were conquering territories and so on and so forth. So they would just come to a place like Nigeria or the geographical space that's Nigeria. And when they come to the geographical space that's Nigeria, they will now conquer the local people and take control of the people, and then they take control of their resources and then repatriate it to where? Their home nation. So it was a very terrible scenario that so many scholars and so many students alike tried to address. So by virtue, there's what is called minority problem. Minority problem, as I've said earlier, arises because of the creation, the political creation of the state referred to as Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have some states that are larger, while the other states are smaller. For example, you might take a tribe. Let's take, for example, a tribe that the Hausa Fulani. They have a whole lot of states that they are controlling. And then let's take, for instance, Ibibio. How many states does Ibibio control? Just one. And so you can look at the travesty and the injustice. And then you have the problem whereby the majority deprives this minority of their rights. The majority, as we've said it, typically is the Hausa Fulani. It can equally be the Yoruba, it can equally be the Igbo nation or whatever. And then we have some other minority tribal groups. So this has been a major problem to Nigerian federalism. Now, we're in the United States that practices the ideal system. What happens in the United States? We have everybody treated equally. In the United States, you will have Italian Americans, you will have French Americans, you will have Black Americans, and so on and so forth. There is what is called equality before the law, according to Professor A.V. Dyson. So we have such problems, and then so many scholars, so many reviews are taking place to correct such problems. And then thirdly, you have inter-ethnic rivalry and conflict. These are very serious problems in Nigeria. Why so? Because you usually have ethnic crisis. Ethnic crisis here is crisis of communalism between tribes. For instance, you will hear this tribe is fighting with this tribe. Why is it so? Because there is the problem of land ownership. That is why when I say communalism, I am trying to say that there is the problem of land ownership. Why so? Because a particular ethnic group might breach the territorial gap or the territorial space that it was originally allocated for. And when you go through history, you'll find out that the other group were the original owners of that particular place. And so when it happens like that, you find out that there's going to be crisis, there's going to be conflict. And when it happens so, it affects the federal status quo. And then we are equally going to look at the issue of secession. So many of you are good students of history. You will remember what happened in 1966. So we said another problem of Nigerian federalism is what the issue of secession. The issue of secession is a very serious problem. Student of history, you remember your history of the Nigerian Biafran War. It started by an agitation like this that led to that issue. Why so? Because of the problem of exploitation and the problem of preference, where some nations will prefer over the other. So it led to what is called the issue of secession. It is not only in Nigeria that we have a typical issue of secession, we have it in other states. But our main focus, I've said earlier, is federalism in Nigeria. So by virtue of the secession that took place in 1967, federal forces who had the support of most world powers conquered the seceding powers, giving Nigeria the federal structure that it was. And then lastly, let's look at boundary disputes. Boundary disputes. Most of these problems are interwoven. Why do I say so? Because boundary issue here is associated with inter-ethnic rivalry. It has to do with tribes. For instance, a particular tribe has been created for a particular village. Sorry, a particular land. A particular land has been created for a particular village. And then a neighboring village is coming to encroach into that land. There is bound to be a problem. That's why we have so many issues where you have boundary. Akwa getting involved with Cross River State, Ituane, what is it called? Cross River State. Cross River State getting involved with this and that and that and that. And it is becoming a serious issue to the Nigerian federal system. So we are scholars, students alike are looking for a meaningful solution to ameliorate this problem. And then for your assignment, you're going to be defining the federal system in your own words. Give me the definition of a federal system in your own words, and then you're going to give me a brief overview of the development of federal system in Nigeria. Is that okay? Let me repeat it again. You're going to give me the definition of a federal system in your own words, and then you're going to equally give me a brief overview of the development of a federal system in Nigeria. Thank you very much.